First of all, I want to share I am not finished healing or awakening. I make mistakes and I am not perfect. But I have spent over 10 hours practicing meditation, mindfulness, non-dual teachings, receiving therapy, and trying out all kinds of healing, awakening modalities. And here are the 10 most valuable things I have learned during all of this. 1. Most spiritual practices are ineffective and lead to even more confusion and suffering. A lot of spiritual practices I did left me feeling more confused and more lost and harmed me. At the beginning, for example, I used to try to find meaning in everything and thought that is what being spiritual is all about. Someone smiles at me, my mind goes, what does this mean? Does the universe try to tell me something right now? Why does this water drop fall on the ground there and not somewhere else? What does it mean? I used to analyze the smallest things to death to find some hidden message from the universe. These things made me crazy. I feel dizzy just writing about them and remembering them. Later I came to experience that all suffering in life, 100%, comes from the meaning I give to things. Not even the greatest physical pain, most life-threatening situations, or heartbreak can cause suffering if it is stripped of all meaning and left just as it is. It is by giving up all understanding or all meaning that the mind finds its true home of great bliss. 2. Thinking about the practice and doing it are two different things. Especially when I was starting, I was thinking about my practice 95% of the time and practicing it only for around 5% of the time. This is very common to do. If you find yourself thinking more about your practice than practicing it, then you can take that as an opportunity to remind yourself to practice whenever you notice this tendency. This has helped me an enormous amount. A great teacher of mine used to say, when you don't know if you are practicing correctly, relax and stop describing. When you are thinking about your practice, relax and stop describing. When you think you have got it, relax and stop describing. In other words, the mind wants something complicated. The mind wants to understand something. Leave your mind unsatisfied and your heart will be shining with happiness. 3. Being healed or awakened doesn't look a certain way. One of the greatest teachers I ever meet couldn't sit still in a chair and be constantly moving around his chair as though he had ants in his pants. He liked football and playing computer games and struggled with his weight. Yet his presence was so profound that by me just walking into the same room as him, all my thoughts and concerns would immediately vanish without him even needing to say a word. His teachings would make my cheeks ache as I was laughing and smiling so much, and although he had quite a grumpy face inside, he was at peace. He blew open all ideas I had about being spiritual and mindful. Some of the greatest teachers have often used skillful means like these to shatter people's perceptions of what awakening looks like. All ideas about awakening or healing are not it. They are empty concepts devoid of anything. 4. Negative emotions and pain are a treasure chest. It is easy to think that healing or awakening means the absence of negative emotions and pain. But what I have come to see is that it works the other way around. It is not the emotions or sensations of pain that change, it is just the perception of them. Negative emotions and pain can be experienced as an expression of pure bliss. Nothing you experience needs to change for you to find peace. It is just the resistance towards any experience is dropped. That is what reveals the peace that is always already there. 5. Not knowing is greater than any realization or awakening that I ever had. My mind came up with the most beautiful philosophies and theories of how the mind works. I had many times the feeling that I got the final awakening, only to be in misery a few days after. With time I came to see that none of these insights or awakenings are greater than not knowing. Not knowing is the ultimate surrender. It is giving up all the need to understand, describe, or control reality in any way. Not knowing is where all the greatest realizations, insights, and awakenings ever had by anyone have come from. Not knowing is the source of all the peace, bliss, love, and anything you might want. It is complete openness. 6. I am not a closed system separate from everything else. In the beginning, I used to think that I can just practice by myself and get all the results I want. Then I went to a retreat center and realized that the happiest people were those who took on the most support. I discovered the more aware a person is, the more humble and willing to take on the support they were. This left a deep impression on me. I realized how painfully arrogant I had been, never wanting to take on any help or support from anyone and wanting to do everything by myself. With time I realized that my resistance to being supported came from traumatic experiences I made earlier in life that left me scared and distrusting of most people. While it is better to be independent than rely on toxic people, I realized that the quickest way is to rely on someone who already has the results I was seeking for. 7. The information I consume has a profound effect on my mind. The mind is constantly absorbing outside information whether we are aware of it or not. Where we put our attention ends up determining what is in our mind, and that will determine our reality. If we expose the mind constantly to inputs that reinforce the seemingly separate nature of everything, the mind will adapt to seeing the world in that way. When most of my information diet started to consist of things that would put my mind at ease, that is when I started to notice big things happening. The mind is just a natural outcome of all the conditioning we have been exposed to in our life. What we feed the mind will become. 8. Relationships matters. One of the greatest fallacies a lot of coaches, teachers, and therapists make is that they look at the individual as a separate self, distant from everything else that is happening. The focus is always on the individual and their seeming problems and shortcomings. However, all behavior, all thoughts, and emotions occur in response to the relationships and environment in our life. It is only natural for someone would, for example, develop anxiety in response to being exposed to very threatening relationships for long periods. There is nothing wrong with it. It is a perfectly appropriate response to dangerous relationships. A wise man once said, "Before you diagnose yourself with depression or a low self-esteem, make sure you are not surrounded by assholes." When you take into account the relationships and environment and past of a person, a lot of the seemingly irrational behaviors, thought patterns, and emotions start to make sense. What I have found out working with my clients is that most of their disturbing emotions can be traced back to abusive relationships they have in their life or had in their life in the past. Sometimes it is not meditating that will bring you the greatest well-being, but distancing yourself from toxic influences and reintroducing more nurturing relationships into your life. 9. The environment matters. The information, relationships, and other inputs we are exposed to are very linked to our environment. I was supporting a friend once who was in a very emotionally toxic environment, and although she was meditating every single day and trying to use everything as an opportunity to become more conscious, it was barely enough to keep her sane. As soon as I helped her get out of the environment, her progress skyrocketed. She had realization after realization, and her whole personality began to change in a matter of months. If your mind is exposed to narcissistic people continuously, it will always try to anticipate what will happen next and how to avoid possible attacks and manipulations. The mind can't be at rest if it is continuously surrounded by this. Even if you can find momentary relief through your practice and peace amidst the chaos and insanity of this world, if you have the choice and the means, it is always best to expose yourself to an environment that supports the flourishing of your well-being rather than hammer against it. If you want to have small results, you can make small changes. However, if you want big results, something like completely changing your environment can work wonders. 10. Having a good coach or teacher can 10x the progress. There were many times when my teacher could just say one thing to me and it opened up a whole new world for me. I didn't even know that I could find peace amid depression, intense desire, loneliness, anger, grief, and so forth until my teacher pointed it out to me. I was always trying to get rid of my negative emotions, not realizing they were the source of the greatest bliss when left to be as it is, without trying to control them. We tend to believe that everything we do is a result of our effort. However, in my experience, one's effort is not the most important ingredient of the amount of well-being and love in one life. A lot of people make an enormous effort and just stay normal. In my experience, it is the quality of the teacher one is learning from that most determines the results. This is why some people can practice something for 20 years and still experience mediocre results. And on the other hand, people can make breakthroughs in a few weeks or months that have profound life-altering effects if they get the right guidance and support. Having a great teacher is the single most life-changing thing that happened in my life. They pointed out all my blind spots and pitfalls I was not even aware of and opened my mind to entirely new realities. Just a look from them or a simple gesture like a hug, at times, shed years of conditioned defense mechanisms as the purity of their love touched my heart. I hope reading about these lessons I learned was helpful to you. Let me know if you ever have any questions.